Right, morning all again. Right, basically this is the preparation I have to do, or I am doing, to set off on a bit of a journey. So here, hopefully you'll see some containers of wood. Now of course, since I've got a wood burner, evidently you want to carry a bit of wood on the van. And so what I'm doing is basically coming on here and sticking some wood on. So I'm going to flip you around in a minute. And so I'm putting the bins up here, and there'll be 3 bins. Now if I'm away for any length of time, evidently because I've got a wood burner, what people don't really understand is you have to carry wood. You can't just pick it up off the floor because you don't know how dry it is or wet it is, etc. So anyway, so I'm putting on 3 extra bucketfuls of timber, which I know each one of those buckets will burn in the fire for at least 3-4 days if I'm careful. So we'll see how we go in a few minutes then. Cheers folks. Okay, so you can see my 3 bins up there now. They've got a bit of timber in there basically. I know there's a fair bit of supply there, and naturally you can always pick up a bit of timber as you go in. Just remember, ash you can burn, you know, wet, or you can burn dry. It will still burn quite reasonable. If you know what an ash tree is, look around for one. You'll still find it looks like a bunch of grapes hanging off a tree with the seed pods, etc. That's an ash tree. There's no leaves on them at the moment, but you'll soon see what an ash tree is if you do. Most of the other timbers, if they're wet, they don't burn very well. You can stick them on, but you'll lose more heat burning wet wood anyway. But you know, there's a few more bits and pieces going on, folks. Cheers. And of course, I'm not forgetting, I've got to take a bit of extra sawdust for my toilet, my composting toilet. So that little box has got to go on shortly, but since I've just spotted that leak, I've just got to go in and do a few other little jobs, and I'll be back out soon. Cheers folks. Right, apologies for that, I can try and edit that. Right, wood burners. I've got a wood burner in my stove, in my van, tonka, and I've read 1 or 2 bits and pieces about them, and houseless, not homeless. I don't know, I can't remember your first name now, sorry. Anyway, he put a question and answer about gas and use of gas, and there's various other comments, and I've got his site up on here, and I sort of do a rough idea of costings. And I am not here to insult anybody's intelligence whatsoever. This is how I've done it, this is how I've got around the problems or whatever. It's not the be and end all. I heard 1 or 2 people, I don't like to mention names, but which, you know, I respect everybody's comments. I've gone the route of buying a reasonable price fire, and the reason I have a reasonable price fire is I could afford it. I've got nothing against colour gas ones, little other fires made out of this and made out of that. I've got one in my conservatory which I'll do a little bit of a shoot on to show you. But the reason I've put a decent fire in my motorhome is because, like you say, health and safety. I have a CO2 detector. I've read 1 or 2 reports. Yes, you can get, as you put it, just flexi-tube, and you know, I use the word cobble together. I've got no problem with that. You know, it's horses for courses. You do what you want. I've worked out here. I've just gone through my booklet. I do keep all the list of my stuff. And to be honest, with all the bits and pieces to fit that fire, I didn't get much change out of £500, a lot of money. The fire was a couple of £100. The twin wall tubing, that's the most expensive. If you have single wall tubing, naturally it's damned hot and you have to put insulation up, or it just causes more problems, and this is what I'm saying, you don't want nothing to self-combust. I'm not an expert. I bought an insulated panel to the side of my kitchen. That was £50. You can get a blowtorch to it, it won't cause any problems, because I wanted to put my fire in a certain position, and evidently it's close to the kitchen, and of course you don't want is too much heat on the kitchen, on the wood and everything else. So I've put this fire panel in there. You can get slightly cheaper ones for about £35–40, but neither here or there. You still have to insulate in some respects, and that's why I've gone the twin wall flue, and I've gone out through the roof. One or two comments I've mentioned here about, oh, I wouldn't go through the roof because of leaks, I'd go through the side. Well, I can assure you, go through the side of a van, you've still got to buy an elbow. Secondly, guarantee you, go past a bit of a close run something and everything else, and you're going to get it knocked off. If you're stationary, fine, come through the side. I've seen it come through the side, it looks a flipping mess. Go through the roof, insulate it properly, and you'll have no problem. Get the proper stuff, which I've got a list of. Heat resistant silicone, you can gob that round. Aluminium panels, get yourself some flash banding. You can get it from Juicens, it's about 8 to 10 quid a roll for a small sheet. You can do all the insulation you need, you won't get a leak. Going through the side, I can tell you, with my van and with most vans, you don't cater for 5, 6, 7 inches sticking out the side. You'll get it knocked off. My aerial's been smashed off about 3 times already, and that's sticking out the side of my van. Yes, my van's slightly wider than a normal van. Somebody else has said, as I've said, going back to the gas bottle, you can get the gas bottle, you can get, which I've got a 6-inch tube, which I'll show you shortly. Hopefully I'm not rambling too much. If you want information, it's out there, but this is how I worked it for me. It's comfortable. I can adjust the wood burner. In other words, I can put wood on there, get it going, and then I can turn it down, because you have a, with the proper controls you can turn it down. I found on some of the cheaper stoves, when I say cheaper, which is the Caligas, remodeled Caligas bottles, or various other tubing, you can't adjust them on the heat content. Not so easy. And the biggest drawback I found with having a so-called fire in my conservatory, which is just a simple cheap one, which is about £80, £90, and a single wall tubing straight out, and I've got insulation on the walls, a little bit type of thing, which is old saw blades, which I'll take you to a picture shortly. It's okay, but you'll get a lot of dust. You'll get a lot of dust, and I can assure you it gets everywhere, because you tend to leave your door open slightly to adjust the heating. If I have this on a drawer, in other words, open the bottom of the vent, leave the top shut and bang wood in, it eats wood like it's going out of fashion, and I can get that metal to glow red hot. If I get a chance, I'll put a little clip in. If not today, another day. It gets hot and it burns and eats wood. If you have the door open and the vent open at the bottom, then it will burn quite nicely, but you've got open fire then you have to be careful of sparks and spitting, and it all depends what wood you burn. If you buy cheapo wood or pallet wood or anything that you can pick up like that, it does spit, and it also clogs your chimney up, so that's another reason you've got to be careful of. I burn in my conservatory pretty much most junk and everything else, but in my van I burn, well, it's not proper wood because it's just wood. I'll burn what I cut down or what I get, which is basically ash, beech, oak, very nice, birch, sycamore, anything like that basically, because it will burn clean. You can burn a certain wood you can burn a wood ash, which you can burn wet or dry. And when I say wet, I don't mean soaking wet. You can buy yourself a little meter, but you don't need that basically, which is basically just a probe which I've got, and you can test wood. The wetter the wood is, right, you'll get it to burn, but you'll lose a lot of heat on it, because basically the fire you've got, and you put slightly damp wood on, it will sort of cool your fire down, and it will do what it says, it will cool your fire down. If you keep dry wood, basically it will burn nice and hot and crisp. But like as I says, if you burn rubbish, plywood, you name it, MDF, anything like that, it's crap. It will clog your chimney up, and that means you've got to keep cleaning your chimney. So there you go. What else do I cover? Not much else really. I'll try and clip in a bit more. What else is there? Nothing else. Evidently I've got a pair of gloves, a pair of welder's gloves, which I use to sort of load the fire and open the fire door, etc. In the van, the tonka, I do tend to use a little mitten which you get with the fire, which is nothing, but I've also got a spare pair of gloves. I'm going to come out the way a bit, and these are them basically. And I've just used the one just to open the door, shove the wood on, etc. It's about knackered and my fingers popping out the end, but hey ho. And the other thing you need to do is a saw. Most people think, oh, what do you want one of these for? Well, this is a proper garden saw, and so this will cut wet wood, green wood, you name it, and it's cheap as chips. There's about £9. You can use a normal saw, just get a decent one with about 7 teeth per inch, nothing too finer than that, and you'll cut most wood and timber, green wood or whatever, but this is made for the job. You can make yourself some small rounds and then just chop them with an axe. Need a small axe basically. This is what I tend to use. I do sharpen it, and it has caught my finger a couple of times. Just keep a reasonable keen edge on there. Evidently don't hit it into the dirt or into anything else. I have a little block there which I use. Sorry if I'm keeping it out of focus. So there you are. I mean, you know, horses for courses. You can do a cheap job, and I'm not knocking that, but like we said, health and safety, you've got to think that, you know, I can put that fire on, I can cook, you know, chill out. I've you know, got clips in the van about it. Anyway, I don't want to ramble on too much. So there you go. I'll clip on a few more bits and pieces about the fire now, and then I'll try and tag this on and get this loaded. I hope it's of some use. Anybody who's passing or sees me can come and have a look. I've got no truck with that at all. There you go. I'm not an expert. Certainly not an expert. I've researched it. I've had a fire in the conservatory for some time. Cheap as chips. It saves me money because I sit in here in the conservatory and it saves me £10 a week. Okay, some days I have to go out looking for wood and timber, etc., which I've put online where to go, and I don't cut the trees down. I know a couple of blokes who work for the council, and if I ask them nicely and slip them a few pounds, they will drop me some timber off. But I usually scout around and get it myself actually, and you can usually find it. And like I says, if you can get away without burning pallet wood, it is better. It's alright to sort of crack on and start your fire, then fine. I'll try and add a few more bits and pieces in because I can see I'm rattling too much. Anyway, to all the people who have commented to houseless, not homeless, or my apologies. Yeah, houseless, not homeless. I can't remember what your name is. I don't know if it's Matt or something. Anyway, I'm rambling. I hope this little chat sorts it. You know, at the end of the day, you've got to work out your pros and cons with your gas and everything else. I mean, I've still got gas central heating, so first thing in the morning, put my gas central heating on when it's cold. There you go. So 20 minutes, it's warmed up. If I'm going to be in a place for some day, like I've got a can of Chase, if I feel as though I'm going to be there some day and it gets a bit cool, I can put the fire on, I can put my wood burner on, and I can turn it down so it doesn't eat all the wood. And when I say turn it down, you can literally turn it down, and so it's just embers. And with a glass door, it gives you that effect of nice and warm anyway. And don't forget, with a cast stove, the whole idea is a cast stove is to get warm, and heat radiates. I've also got a little tiny fan that will fit on the top when it's warm. I seem to have a link somewhere in my conservatory which is dripping on my paper. That's handy, isn't it? I've no idea where that's coming from. Anyway, I'll end this now. Cheers.